What's up, guys? I'm Lucas, and welcome to Terracotta Aquarium. This is episode 3 of the Epiphyte only aquarium, and today we're going to be adding some fish.
In episode 1, we set up a hardscape with a couple pieces of spiderwood and 5 black lava rocks, along with a simple sand-only substrate. And in episode 2, we planted the aquarium with exclusively epiphyte plants such as java fern, bulbitis, and bucephalandra. If you haven't seen the first 2 episodes, make sure that you check out the playlist here.
So before we add the fish, as you can see, the aquarium is quite cloudy at the moment. I just came back from vacation, and while I was gone, something happened to this aquarium. So actually, it wasn't really this aquarium, it was another aquarium, but it affected this aquarium. As you can see, there's no filter here, and that's because I had to transfer it to another tank. So this is the filter in question right here. This was running on that tank. And I did have the same filter running here, but while I was gone, it stopped working, and the fish that we're going to add are actually in this tank right now. I'll show you them in a second. I needed to get a working filter on this tank, so luckily it's going to work out because all of the fish that are in here now are going to be headed into the other tank today. So yeah, that contributed to the cloudiness and all of the tannins that have built up. So before we add these fish, we're going to do a big water change in the other tank. So yeah, as you can see, it is super cloudy in here right now, and it's just full of tannins. So we're going to want to get rid of all of that. So first thing I'm going to do is just take all of the water down and bring it right back up. But before we do that, we can just take a closer look at the fish in this tank. So right now, I think there are about 10 Porkchop Rasboras in here. They're all kind of in a little school on the side at the moment. But I'm gonna move them over to that tank. There were some Medalkas in here that I've already moved to a different aquarium. And so yeah, this little shoal is gonna go in that tank. And then after that, I think I'm going to redo this aquarium, maybe for a betta or something like that. But I'm just not super happy with how this turned out in the long run. I just don't really like the look of it. But if you're interested in seeing how I set this aquarium up, I do have a video for that. Check it out somewhere on the screen right now. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First things first is going to be a huge water change. All right, so the water is all drained out. It was super murky. So hopefully when we fill it up again now, it's going to be way clearer. But that's the next step. I'm going to start filling this thing up. And I don't know if you can see in the time lapse there, but the walls, the panels of the aquarium were super dirty from all of this wood in here, leaching the tannins and it collecting on the sides and things. So I'm going to continue cleaning just as it fills up. Okay, so we are nearly filled up here. It's filling up much clearer, which is perfect. But just to reiterate, if you didn't see the first 2 episodes, I didn't boil or soak this wood or wash any of the substrate. So that was a huge reason why, especially once I had to remove the filter, it got this murky. But I just want to show you guys that this isn't a huge deal, because over this first week and a half or so, while this has been happening, the tank has also been cycling. Unfortunately, it hasn't had the filter the last couple of days, but that filter has pre-cycled media in it anyway from the last tank, or the tank that it's currently on now, really. So that media is used to the bioload of the Rasboras we're going to be adding. But regardless, I kind of was able to do the soaking process and the cycling process at the same time. So that's something that you guys can totally do as well. And if you end up with a super cloudy tank like that, I mean, it's really not a big deal. I would just, if you're going to not boil your wood like I do, just don't add fish immediately. Don't try to do a fish in cycle, because you will have to do more frequent water changes at the beginning, and that is going to stress your fish out just a little bit. But we're almost done with this water change, and then we can start setting up the filter and the heater, and then we'll catch all the fish. And if you're a beginner, you're probably not going to have a tank like this where you're planning to move the fish to a new one and then rescape it. So imagine that the fish in here, this is like a tank at the fish shop that you're going to, to get some of your first fish. And imagine that I'm like the guy at the store who's going to be catching them out for you. I'll do that part, and then we can imagine that you're coming home with the bag of fish to add them into your new aquarium. But the process is going to be pretty much the same. You're just not going to be catching the fish yourself when you go to the shop. And the tank is already looking so much better, so much clearer, just a little water change, and it's perfect. So next thing, I want to get the heater going to get it to the right temperature. The water I was using to fill this was a little bit colder than I want, so getting the heater going now, just going to ensure that it's the right temperature when we want to add the fish. Next up, move this filter to the new aquarium. Okay, so there we go. Filter is set up. There's just one thing I want to show you guys. I mentioned pre-cycled media before. You might not know what that is. So in here, I've got this little bag. And this is just a bunch of filter media. If you know what this is, you've probably been doing this hobby for a little while. If you're new to the hobby, you probably aren't going to know what this is. But it's essentially just a bunch of porous material that beneficial bacteria can breed on. And beneficial bacteria will maintain the nitrogen cycle in your aquarium. And when this stuff is already cycled full of beneficial bacteria, you can easily take it out of filters, move it to new filters, and that'll help you cycle your new aquarium faster than you would otherwise, like starting from scratch. So if you have a friend in the aquarium hobby and you're thinking about starting your own aquarium, make sure that you go and you ask them for some beneficial bacteria or filter media, used filter media. And that'll really make sure that at the start of your new aquarium that you'll have a much easier start than you would otherwise. You can also probably go to your local fish shop and ask them for just a handful of this stuff and they'll probably give it to you, as long as they're using filters like hang on the back or canister filters that have this kind of thing. If they have a sponge filter, they can't quite as easily give you beneficial media like this. But there are other ways, like you could squeeze a sponge into a bag of tank water and take that with you, and pouring that into your tank without fish in it, like at this stage, it would then colonize your media in your filter. So there are a few ways to do that, and that is a little bit of a hack you can do. I'm kind of showing both here. Like if I had this filter running on this tank the whole time and was just dosing beneficial bacteria to the tank through sea chem stability or some other product, then the tank would still be ready for fish. But we'll talk about the cycling a little bit more as well after I add the fish, because there is just a little bit of cycling that happens every time you add fish to a tank. The beneficial bacteria is always going to kind of readjust. But we'll talk about that more after we get the fish. Okay, so time to catch the fish out of here. And as I said before, I'm planning on breaking this tank down anyway. So I'm going to get some of the hardscape out of here, all of the floating plants, and then I'll get in here and catch the fish. Okay, so now imagine that I'm the guy at the fish store. What they're going to do is take a plastic bag to bag up your fish in. But in this case, I'm just going to use this plastic jug. I'm just going to get some of the tank water in here. To about that much. Then I'm going to get all of the fish in here. So imagine that this is the plastic bag that they'll be in. So I'm putting that aside, and now I'm going to get in here and I'm going to net out all of the fish. And ideally, I'm not going to have to drain too much water or take out too many of the plants at this point, but I'll cross that bridge when I get there. I might have to go a little bit further, but let's go for it. Okay, so I've got all of the Rasboras in this little cup right here. I think we've got a group of 8 of them, and I thought there were 9. So one or two might still be hiding in the tank. So if you do move fish from tanks like this, one tank to another, something like that. Make sure that you don't drain all of the water immediately afterwards, because there's a high chance that there's a fish still in there hiding somewhere. But now that we've got them here, we can acclimate them to the other tank. So the water parameters are going to be pretty close because they are both tap water from my house essentially, but that one has more minerals in it than this one does at the moment. So I'm just going to be extra safe and just acclimate these guys slowly to this tank until the water level is about double what it is now. So I'll show you how to do that. All you do, take a little bit of water from the tank that the fish are going to be in and pour a little bit of that water, just a couple drops at a time for this size, just a little bit at a time until the water level is probably about here, something like that. When you get fish in a bag, like from a fish shop, you can take the bag, open it and float it in the top of your tank, and then they will slowly temperature acclimate, but you can add water from the tank straight to the bag like that, and then you can release the whole thing into your tank, as long as you feel safe with the water that's coming from your local fish shop. So if you don't trust your local fish shop, or if you don't have a reason to do so, it's important not to pour the water that the fish are going to come in their bag into your aquarium, because their water might have elements that you're not prepared to deal with. It could introduce some sort of disease or something similar to your aquarium. So it's a good idea to acclimate the fish in that bag of water and then either net those fish out and add them to the aquarium, or pour that bag into a net and then release the fish from the net. In this situation, I don't have to do that because this is all my water and I know that it's all good. It's coming from a place where these fish have lived for a while, and there was nothing wrong going with that tank. So luckily for me, I can avoid that whole process, but just be aware of adding a fish store's water into your tank, especially if there are already other fish in there. It's just better safe than sorry not to do so. All right, guys, so the fish are done acclimating. So you can see there's about double the amount of water in this jug. They've been sitting for about 30 minutes or so. So now we can go ahead and add them straight into the tank. It's really exciting to have fish in this tank. So one thing I didn't do that probably would have been a good idea to do is to turn off the lights before adding them, just so that they are in a darker place to get comfortable to more quickly. But it is pretty dark in here. There's a lot of shadows and that kind of thing. So there's that. But it seems like they're a little skittish at the moment, a little bit stressed out. And I did have to chase them around the tank quite a bit to get all of them. And I did actually find one more after starting to acclimate them and washing the tank for a little bit. So be aware of that. But it will take them a little bit of time to really settle down, especially these guys. These Rasboras are, they're Porkchop Rasboras, if I didn't say, but they are a very skittish little fish. So they're all kind of hanging out over here at the moment. But I'm going to go ahead and just let them chill out, probably for the rest of the night. And then we can come back tomorrow morning and we can check in on them and see how they're doing. But man, it's really exciting to have some movement and some color in here. So I'm really happy about that. But there's also a couple more plants that I added to this tank. Maybe you can already see them. But when we come back tomorrow morning, I'll show you the few new plants that we've added as well. And then we can talk about the next plans for this tank. So stick around. I'll see you in like 5 seconds. One last thing that I almost forgot, but it's really important, and that is adding beneficial bacteria. So this is Seachem Stability. There's lots of products like it that you could use, but it's a bottled beneficial bacteria. And it's important that after you add fish for the first time, even with a cycled filter or having completed a fishless cycle, It's really important to add this. So just follow the instructions on the bottle, add the correct amount. For this aquarium, about 20 gallons, I'm going to use 1 capful. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up first thing and test the water. And I'll show you how to do that tomorrow. So stay tuned. Okay guys, so it is now the next morning and the Rasboras seem to be doing super well. I did adjust the flow on the filter just a little bit because it seemed like they weren't enjoying too much flow and they were kind of hanging out mostly on this side of the tank where the flow is a little bit lower. And since then, they've been spending a little bit more time kind of all over the front here, which is really fun to see. And their orange really, really pops in this tank. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. But now that they've settled in and everything, and there's been a night of them settling and the water also settling in the filter and everything, the most important thing to do after adding fish is to do daily water testing just to make sure for the first few days, maybe week or so, that the parameters are going to stay in check. And I'm pretty sure that they will because we have the cycled filter media in here and everything, and this whole tank was cycling for about a week and a half before adding them. It's good to be sure that the parameters are stable. So how do we test the water? Well, that's with this. This is the API Freshwater Master Test Kit. And with this, you can easily test the levels of pH, ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate in your water. And today, we're going to hear the most about the ammonia and the nitrite. So I can't recommend enough getting a test kit because otherwise you have to go to your local store and they will test your water for free there. But this way, if you notice a problem or if you're unsure at all, you don't have to take the time to leave your house to get an accurate reading. All you have to do is just fill these test tubes up with 5 milliliters of water each, and then just use the testing chemicals as described. Okay, so we've got our first test tube of water, and then the ammonia testing chemicals. We'll just give these a quick little shake. And then for the ammonia, bottle 1 is 8 drops. Bottle 2, 8 drops. And then we're just going to invert the bottle or the test tube a couple times. And then I'm going to do the same for the nitrite and the nitrate. And the instructions of how many drops to add for each bottle are just on the bottles here. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes. And you can generally wait 5 to 10 minutes to get a pretty clear reading. And so this is our ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. And on the sort of little manual here, there's a little bit of a key. So for example, we take a look at our ammonia here. You can kind of put it on top and get a better comparison that way. But essentially our ammonia is reading 0 parts per million. Might be hard to tell the colors on camera here, but yellow color matches the top. And our nitrite is blue, so also 0. So far so good. And then our nitrite appears to be slightly in between 0 and 5 parts per million. So that's just about exactly what we're looking for. So essentially what that reading shows us is evidence of the nitrogen cycle with that little bit of extra nitrate. So that means that the ammonia being produced by the fish and the plants in terms of their waste is being processed into nitrites and then into nitrate. And there are lots of great videos on the nitrogen cycle on YouTube. I highly recommend that you check those out if you're not aware of what the nitrogen cycle is. But it's a crucial part of the ecology of an aquarium. So for us primarily right now, not seeing any ammonia or nitrite is really good. That means that the cycle is happening. Of course, I haven't fed these fish yet, so once we do that, then we're going to really be introducing some more ammonia to the tank. So let's do that now. Let's give them a little feed and see how they respond. So these Porkchop Rasboras are a very skittish little fish, but they do recognize me as the feeder. I like to do a little bit of just like a tap on the glass, just so they associate that with food. They're certainly looking at me. So let's give them a little bit. See if they go for it. They can certainly smell that it's in the water. They're a little bit skittish. I'm gonna step back a little bit. All right, they're starting to go for it. It's important not to overfeed your fish at this point, especially because you'll introduce, quite a bit of ammonia to the aquarium if the food doesn't, immediately get consumed. But I'm gonna add just a little bit more just to make sure they all get some. And hopefully this stuff will be kind of more pushed in their direction. There they go. And of course, they'll start, scavenging around. And they'll pick up a lot of food that gets kind of collected on the floor as they explore the aquarium. Well, the floor gets collected on the substrate as they explore the aquarium. And these guys are really still getting used to this. But you can see how they're really hiding in the lower areas like this down here. And they're not too afraid of me right now. But I've already tossed in quite a bit, so I'm gonna hold back and not give them any more food yet. But you can really see how they're kind of hiding or getting shelter. They're moving away from me now, but in the lower parts of the aquarium like this, I think that's really good for them. That really is kind of like their more natural behavior. They come from slower moving streams where they can get a lot of cover in the foliage, that kind of thing. They're kind of moving away from me. They remember me catching them out of the tank yesterday, but it's okay. They'll get more comfortable as they go. But hiding right like that in those lower parts, that is really kind of what I imagine them doing. So it's really cool to see that. All right, so water test complete. The water is looking perfect, so I'm super happy about that. But we're gonna continue to dose beneficial bacteria for the first week and continue water testing as we go. And I'm going to really keep an eye on the fish every single day. If I notice anything that looks kind of off with them, I'm gonna make sure to test the water and do a water change if necessary. I will probably wait a few days before doing a water change, but I think I will keep up with a weekly 10% water change or something like that, just for the first week, to just make sure that everything is super stable and the tank's well cycled and everything. But that test is really good evidence that we've done a great job so far. Just gonna add some more stability. So half a cap for this size of tank. And then we did do that big water change yesterday. So I'm gonna add some more fertilizer to the tank. I'm gonna go with 4 pumps of the plant food min, which is the recommended dose. Even though I've set up quite a few aquariums at this point, it is still just super exciting every time you add fish to a new setup, and it really makes the whole thing come alive. So it's gonna be really fun to watch these guys settle in for the next probably week. I think my plan for the next episode is going to be to go get the corydoras, which was the whole idea for this tank to begin with the sandy, no nutrient substrate. A group of smaller corys is just going to be absolutely perfect. And it'll probably be interesting to see how they change the behavior of the Rasboras as well. So cool that they're kind of coming over to me at the moment. But you may have already noticed that there were a couple other changes to the tank, just a couple small ones. But I did end up getting more Anubias. There was a sale at one of my local shops on Anubias Barteri for like $8 a pot. So I ended up getting 4 pots because, I mean, that's a great deal on Anubias, honestly. So if you look around, like there's a piece here, there's a piece here. I tried to use it to fill out some of the areas in the Epiphyte mass, essentially, that were just a little bit lighter. And so I think they've done a great job. I also decided to add some more floating plants. Just because I had a whole bunch extra, growing in other tanks, I figured, why not just chuck them in? And that could be something that you decide to do as well. As you start setting up your tank, first week you start with 2 types of plants, and then you go to the store and get a couple more pots the next week. You don't need to do it all at once, and it can be really fun to kind of space it out and watch your tank evolve over the first few weeks in terms of adding plants, and then the next few months it'll evolve with the plants growing. So yeah, that's the only couple of changes, and hopefully this filter will continue to do its job. I have to decide what to do with that now empty tank, well, empty of fish, in terms of what I'm going to do to rescape it. So if you're not subscribed to the channel and you want to see the next episode here and maybe what I do with that tank in the future, make sure that you subscribe and like the video if you liked it. And thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate you all. But stay tuned for the next episode. Probably in a week or so, we'll be adding the corys. But until then, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.